My stepsister looked me in the eye and said, "You're not his daughter. Now get out of my house." I felt my heart break right there. She didn't know I had already seen the crumpled, real DNA test results hidden under her mattress, proving she was lying. At the end of the video, share your opinion in the comments on how you would handle such a situation. And now let's get back to my story. It all started 15 years ago when I was just 8 years old. My mother had passed away 2 years before, and my father, John, was a very good man but lonely. He met Linda, a kind woman with a daughter named Sarah who was 7 years old, just 1 year younger than me. My father loved me very much. He was a simple, honest man who worked hard. He owned a small but successful carpentry business. He built beautiful furniture, and our house always smelled like fresh wood. Linda seemed nice at first. She was quiet and always smiled. Sarah was also quiet. I was so happy to have a new sister and a new mother. I wanted to share everything with Sarah. I offered her my toys, my favorite books, and even my special chocolate from my father. I tried so hard to be a good big sister. I truly thought we would be a family, but things changed slowly, like a slow storm coming. After my father and Linda married, Linda started to show her true self. She would often tell me how lucky I was that her and Sarah came into our lives. She would say, "Your father was so sad, we saved him." It made me feel like I was a burden, even though my father always told me I was his light. Sarah also changed. She started to get very jealous of me. She saw how much my father loved me, how he would read me bedtime stories every night, how he would take me to the park on Saturdays, just me and him. He would always bring me a little treat from his shop, a tiny wooden bird or a smooth, polished stone. He always told me, "You are my sunshine, Lily." Sarah started to do little mean things. She would hide my school books, blame me for breaking her toys, or tell Linda made-up stories about me being rude. Linda would always believe Sarah, always. One time I had a beautiful drawing I made for my father, a picture of our family with him, me, Linda, and Sarah. I was so proud of it. I left it on the kitchen counter for my father to see when he came home. I came back. Sarah had drawn messy scribbles all over my face in the drawing. I started to cry and Linda came in. I tried to explain, but Sarah just put on a sad face and said, "She's always so mean to me, Mommy. She took my crayons." Linda just shook her head at me and said, "Lily, why can't you be nice to your sister? You're older, you should know better." My father came home later and saw the ruined drawing. He hugged me tight and said, "It's okay, my dear, we can make a new one." But I saw the sad look in his eyes. He loved me so much, but he also wanted peace in his new family. As the years went by, the tension grew thicker in our house. My father tried his best to make everyone happy, but it was like walking on eggshells. He would take us on family trips, but Linda and Sarah would always find a way to make me feel left out. They would whisper secrets in front of me or talk about their family before my father met me. I felt like an outsider in my own home. I learned to keep quiet, to stay in my room, to study hard, hoping one day I could leave and make my own life. My father noticed my sadness. He would often come to my room and sit with me just talking, telling me stories about my mother, about our family before Linda and Sarah. He would say, "Never forget who you are, Lily. You are a strong, kind girl, and you are my daughter always." Those words were like a shield for me against the coldness of Linda and Sarah. My father worked even harder. He wanted to give me the best education, a good start in life. He expanded his carpentry business. He invested wisely. Our small house became a bigger, beautiful home. He told me he was saving up, planning for my future. He often talked about his dreams for me, for my college, for my own business one day. Sarah, meanwhile, was not interested in school. She liked parties, shopping, and spending money. Linda always spoiled her. My father would try to talk to Linda about Sarah's future, but Linda would just say, "She's a free spirit, John. Let her be happy." I saw the worry lines on my father's face grow deeper with each passing year. When I was 20 years old, tragedy struck our family again. My father became very sick. It was sudden and it was fast. The doctors said it was a rare illness and there was nothing they could do. My heart was completely broken. I spent every moment I could by his side, holding his hand, telling him how much I loved him. He was weak, but he still smiled at me. He told me, "Lily, my brave girl, I have left everything for you, everything you need to be strong, to be free. Don't let anyone take it from you. You are my true blood." He looked at me, then at Linda, who stood further away, and a deep sadness filled his eyes. He passed away peacefully a few days later. The silence in the house after he was gone was deafening. I felt like my world had ended. I had lost both my parents, and now I was alone, or so I thought. The day after my father's funeral, the atmosphere in the house changed from sadness to something cold and hostile. Linda and Sarah stopped pretending to be sad. They started to act like they owned everything. Linda immediately took over the household finances, saying she needed to manage things now that my father was gone. I didn't question it. I was too deep in my grief. I spent my days crying in my room, looking at old photos of my father and me. About 2 weeks after the funeral, my father's lawyer, Mr. Thompson, called us for the will reading. We all gathered in his office. It was me, Linda, and Sarah. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat and began to read my father's last will and testament. He read, "I, John Miller, being of sound mind, hereby bequeath all my worldly possessions, including my carpentry business, all my savings, and my beloved family home at 123 Oak Street, to my dear and only biological daughter, Lily Miller." The room went silent. Then Sarah gasped. Linda's face turned white, then red. I sat there, stunned. My father had left everything to me. I knew he loved me, but all of it. I looked at Linda and Sarah. Their eyes were burning holes in me. Mr. Thompson continued, "A trust fund is also established for Lily Miller's education and future endeavors, to be managed by an independent financial advisor until she turns 25. Linda Miller is to receive a small allowance for 1 year to assist with her transition, and Sarah Miller is not mentioned as an heir in this will." "What?" Linda shrieked, jumping up from her chair. "This is outrageous. John would never do this. I am his wife." "Sarah is his daughter too," Mr. Thompson calmly replied. "Mrs. Miller, the will clearly states biological daughter. And I have documented proof that Mr. Miller revised his will 3 months ago specifically to ensure his assets went to Lily Miller." "He was sick. He wasn't in his right mind," Sarah yelled. I just sat there, frozen, feeling a mix of shock and a strange kind of vindication. My father had truly protected me. From that day, my life in that house became a living hell. Linda and Sarah turned into monsters. They started to claim that the will was fake, that I had manipulated my sick father. They spread rumors to our relatives and neighbors, saying I was greedy and selfish. "She stole everything from her poor stepmother and sister," they would say. Linda started to cut off my access to everything. She locked the fridge, saying I ate too much. She hid my clothes, saying I didn't deserve nice things. She would turn off the internet when I needed to study. Every day was a battle. One evening, I came home from the library after studying. I was so tired and hungry. I opened the fridge and it was almost empty. There was some leftover chicken from dinner earlier. As I reached for it, Linda came into the kitchen. "What are you doing?" she snapped. "I'm just getting some chicken. I'm hungry," I said. "That's for Sarah's lunch tomorrow," she said, snatching the plate away. "You think you can just eat whatever you want now that you're so rich? You didn't even cook dinner." "But I was at the library studying," I tried to explain. "Excuses, if you're so rich, go buy your own food," she sneered. Then she took the chicken plate and dumped it into the trash can right in front of my eyes. My stomach growled. I felt tears welling up, but I refused to let them see me cry. I just walked away, feeling weak and humiliated. Sarah was even worse. She started to say horrible things directly to my face. "You're not even a real daughter to him. You're just a parasite," she would hiss when Linda wasn't around. "Our father just took you in out of pity. He wished I was his real daughter." One morning, I was getting ready for an important college interview. I had laid out my best dress, a simple blue dress my father had bought me. I left my room for a moment to grab my bag. When I came back, Sarah was in my room holding a pair of scissors. She looked at me with a smirk. "Oh, this old thing, it has a few holes now. Sorry." She had cut big, jagged holes all over my dress. My heart sank. I just stared at her, unable to speak. She just laughed and walked away. I missed the interview. The climax of their cruelty started when Linda insisted that my father couldn't have known what he was doing when he wrote the will. She kept saying, "He always loved Sarah like his own. He would never exclude her." She brought up the idea of a DNA test to prove I was his daughter. She said, "It's just to clear things up, Lily. To show everyone that the will is valid, that you really are his daughter. Sarah feels left out. This will make her feel better too." I was hesitant. My father was gone. Did we really need to disturb his memory like this? But Linda insisted, saying it was the only way to stop the rumors and bring peace to the family. I loved my father and I was his daughter, so I agreed, thinking it would finally shut them up. We went to the clinic. It was a simple cheek swab. They told us the results would be ready in 3 days. Those 3 days were filled with nervous energy from me and a strange, excited energy from Linda and Sarah. They were constantly whispering, looking at me with calculating eyes. I started to feel uneasy. I remembered my father's last words, "Don't let anyone take it from you. You are my true blood." Why would he say that if there was no doubt? A cold knot formed in my stomach. On the 3rd day, the clinic called. Linda insisted she would pick up the results. I wanted to go with her, but she said, "No, it's just a formality, I'll bring it home." I waited, my stomach churning. She came back about an hour later, holding a sealed envelope. Her face was tight, but Sarah was beaming. My heart sank a little. Linda sat me down at the kitchen table. Sarah stood beside her, a smug look on her face. Linda slowly opened the envelope. She read the paper inside, her eyes scanning the words. Her expression changed from tight to a look of utter shock and then a cruel triumph. She cleared her throat dramatically. Linda held up the paper, her hand shaking a little, but her voice was steady and cold. "Lily," she began, "I have some very shocking news for you." Sarah stood behind her, a wide, horrible smile spreading across her face. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I knew something was terribly wrong. I felt a chill run down my spine, a deep sense of dread. "Results are in," Linda continued, her eyes fixed on mine without a flicker of warmth. "And it says that John Miller is not your biological father." My breath hitched in my throat. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. It was like the world had stopped spinning. "What?" I finally whispered, my voice barely audible. That's impossible. He's my father. He always told me I was his daughter." Sarah stepped forward, her voice dripping with venom. "Oh, boo-hoo, cry me a river, Lily. Turns out you're nothing to him, just some random kid he took in. My mother was so generous to let him marry her after he had already had a child with someone else, probably someone he paid to take away his problem. You were never meant to be a part of our family." Linda nodded, her expression hardening. "It's true, Lily. The DNA doesn't lie. You have no blood relation to John. This means you have no right to his will, to his business, or to this house. The will clearly states biological daughter. And that, my dear, is not you." I felt a wave of nausea. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of her words. My father loved me. He told me I was his true blood. How could this be? It had to be a mistake. "No," I said, shaking my head, tears finally starting to stream down my face. "This is a lie. This has to be a lie. My father, he would never." Sarah cut me off, her eyes shining with malicious glee. "He would never what? Lie to you? Guess what he did? He adopted you maybe, but you are not his blood. The will is null and void for you. All his wealth, all his assets, the house, it all comes to me now, as his true heir through my mother, his wife." She took the paper from Linda's hand and waved it in my face. It was a single sheet, a simple form with a clinic header and the word excluded highlighted next to my name for the father's relation. I stared at the paper. It looked official. But something deep inside me screamed that it was wrong. I thought back to what my father said on his deathbed. "Don't let anyone take it from you. You are my true blood." He looked at Linda with sadness. He knew, he must have known they would try something. Linda put her hands on her hips, her eyes cold as ice. "So, Lily, consider this your notice. You have 24 hours to pack your things and leave this house. You have no claim here. This is our home now. Sarah is John's heir through me." My heart shattered into a million pieces. The shock, the betrayal, the sheer cruelty of it all was overwhelming. But then a flash, a memory. Just a few days before, I had gone into Sarah's room to borrow a book. She wasn't there. As I reached for the book on her bedside table, I accidentally knocked over a pile of clothes. Underneath them, not quite hidden, I saw a white envelope sticking out from under her mattress. It was a clinic envelope, just like the one Linda was holding now. My name was clearly visible through the clear window, and under it, Father John Miller. Curiosity made me pull it out just a little. And there it was, a report with the words biological daughter, Lily Miller in bold. I saw it. I saw the real report, but I quickly put it back, thinking nothing of it then. Sarah was always so messy. I just thought she had kept her own copy or something. I didn't connect it to anything sinister. But now, looking at the fake report in Linda's hand, looking at Sarah's triumphant, evil face, it all clicked into place. The whispering, the strange excitement, the fact that Linda insisted on picking up the results alone, they swapped it. They swapped the real report for a fake one. Sarah must have taken the real one, copied it, changed the words, and replaced it. The one Linda was holding was a forgery. A cold, hard anger started to replace my grief and shock. My father's words echoed, "Don't let anyone take it from you." He knew, he must have known this was coming. He trusted me to fight for what was mine. I took a deep breath, trying to control the tremor in my voice. "You're lying," I stated, not a question but a cold, hard fact. "This report, it's fake, I know it's fake." Linda laughed, a harsh, dismissive sound. "Oh, really? And how would you know that, little girl? Are you a DNA expert now?" "Yes," I said, looking directly into Sarah's eyes. I saw a flicker of fear there, a tiny tremor before she quickly covered it with a sneer. Because I saw the real report. I saw it in Sarah's room under her mattress just 3 days ago. It said I am John Miller's biological daughter. It said Lily Miller, biological daughter. You swapped it. The smug look on Sarah's face vanished. Her eyes widened. Linda's jaw dropped. The room went absolutely silent. For a brief second, I thought I had them. I thought they would confess. Then Sarah's face twisted into a mask of pure rage. "You lying little tramp," she screamed, lunging at me. "You were snooping in my room, you're making things up, you're a liar, you just want our money." She tried to grab my hair, but I quickly stepped back. Linda recovered fast. "Don't you dare accuse my daughter of such a thing, Lily. You're just desperate, you're a pathological liar, you have no proof, this is the official document." She waved the fake report again. "Now get out. You have 24 hours. If you're not gone by then, I will call the police and have you removed for trespassing and for making false accusations against my innocent daughter." My heart was still aching, but a new resolve was forming. They thought they had won. They thought they could scare me. But my father's words and the image of the real DNA report fueled a fire in me. I would not let them get away with this. I would not let them take my father's legacy. But I knew I couldn't fight them in that house, not then. They were too strong, too ruthless in their lie. I had to be smart, I had to plan, I had to let them think they had won. I looked at Linda, then at Sarah, their faces contorted with triumph and malice. "I'll go," I said, my voice low and steady, surprising even myself. "But you will regret this, both of you," Linda smirked. "Oh, I doubt that very much. Now go pack your bags, and don't even think about taking anything that doesn't belong to you. We'll be watching." I turned and walked away from them towards my room, feeling their hateful stares burning into my back. My mind was already working. I had to leave, but I would come back. And when I did, they would pay for every single tear, every single insult, every single lie. They had no idea who they were dealing with. They had no idea that I carried my father's strength and that I had just begun to fight. I packed only a few clothes, my father's old watch, and a framed photo of him and me, taken when I was a little girl. As I walked out of the house the next morning, passing Linda and Sarah, who stood by the door with smug smiles, I didn't look back. But in my heart, I made a silent promise. This is not over, not by a long shot. The cool morning air, usually a comforting embrace, felt sharp against my face, carrying the faint, smoky smell of distant chimneys and the damp scent of early dew. My worn canvas bag, heavier than it looked with the few clothes and precious mementos I had managed to grab, dug into my shoulder, each step a small protest against its weight. As I walked down the familiar street, past houses where I had once played and laughed, a profound silence descended upon me. It wasn't the silence of peace, but the heavy, pregnant quiet that follows a storm, or perhaps, in my case, precedes an even greater one. The world around me felt muted, as if all sound had been absorbed by the very fabric of the early morning, leaving only the soft crunch of my worn shoes on the gravel path and the frantic drumbeat of my own heart. This silence was a stark contrast to the cacophony of their hateful words that had filled the house for so many months. Gone were Linda's sharp, condescending laughs, Sarah's venomous whispers, and Uncle John's dismissive grunts. Instead, there was this vast, empty expanse, which at first felt like a terrifying void. My ears strained, half expecting to hear a taunt echo from behind me, but there was nothing. Only the gentle rustle of leaves in the ancient oak tree by Mrs. Gable's fence and the distant crow of a rooster puncturing the stillness. This profound absence of their presence, their oppressive energy, was almost disorienting. It was a silence that allowed thoughts to magnify, to reverberate within the confines of my own mind. Each painful memory, each insult, each betrayal now had the space to unfurl, to be examined in the cold, clear light of my new solitude. But with each painful memory came a surge of renewed resolve. This silence was not empty. It was filling with purpose, with a quiet strength that began to settle deep within my bones. It was the fertile ground where my plan would take root, unhindered by their constant negativity. It was the silence of a warrior preparing for battle, honing her focus away from the noise of the world, listening only to the steady rhythm of her own determined breath. This quiet determination was a new companion, a silent promise whispered from my soul to the world, confirming that I was truly on my own but not alone in my fight. My destination was unknown, only that it was away. The bus station, a grimy concrete structure 3 miles from Uncle John's house, was my first tangible goal. The journey there felt endless, each block a small victory, each breath a conscious effort to push past the gnawing fear that twisted in my stomach. The sky was turning from a deep, inky blue to a bruised purple, then to a soft, hopeful pink and orange as the sun began its slow ascent. I watched it, feeling a strange mixture of awe and desolation. A new day, a new life. But where did it begin? When I finally reached the bus station, my shoulders ached and my legs felt like lead. The air inside was thick with the smell of stale coffee and exhaust fumes. I had exactly $57 in my pocket, the small amount I had managed to save from odd jobs before my father passed, carefully hidden from Uncle John's greedy eyes. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and it represented freedom. I bought a ticket to the largest city I could afford, 400 miles away, a place called Riverside, a name that sounded hopeful, like flowing water carrying away the past. The ticket cost $45, leaving me with a mere $12. The weight of that small sum was heavier than any physical burden. The bus was nearly empty. I chose a window seat at the back, curling up against the cool glass, watching the familiar landscape blur and disappear as the bus pulled away from the station at 6:15 a.m. The small town of my childhood, the only home I had ever known, became a speck in the rearview mirror, then vanished entirely. A tear traced a path down my cheek, cold against my skin, but it wasn't a tear of sadness for what I was leaving behind. It was a tear of grief for the loss of what should have been, for the family I had hoped to find in Uncle John, and for the father whose love I carried like a sacred flame. Most of all, it was a tear of fierce determination. My father's old watch, a plain silver timepiece, felt cool and solid beneath my fingertips in my pocket, a constant reminder of his strength, his honesty, his unwavering spirit. He had taught me to never give up, to fight for what was right, and that quiet voice was now my strongest guide. The journey was long and tiring. I spent hours gazing out the window, watching the endless fields give way to rolling hills, then to denser forests, and finally to the sprawling urban landscape of Riverside. The city, when we finally arrived at 4:30 p.m., was a sensory explosion. The air vibrated with the constant hum of traffic, a symphony of honking horns, rumbling engines, and distant sirens. Skyscrapers pierced the hazy sky, their glass facades reflecting the fading afternoon light in a dizzying mosaic of amber and gold. People rushed past, a river of humanity, each face a stranger, each life a mystery. It was overwhelming, exhilarating, and terrifying all at once. My small town had been a quiet pond. This was a roaring ocean. Stepping off the bus, my bag felt even heavier, my body stiff from the long ride. The sheer scale of the city dwarfed me, making my problems feel minuscule yet also impossibly large. I gripped my bag strap tighter, a small island in a sea of bustling activity. The first task was finding shelter. With $12, a proper hotel was out of the question. I walked, guided by instinct, and the faint hope that anything would present itself. The smells of the city were potent, exhaust fumes mixed with hot pretzels, roasting nuts, and the indefinable scent of thousands of lives being lived simultaneously. My stomach rumbled, a sharp reminder that I hadn't eaten since a single granola bar at 8:00 a.m. As evening approached, the city lights flickered on, painting streaks of neon across the darkening sky. The vibrant energy of the daytime began to shift, taking on a harder edge. I felt increasingly vulnerable, a young woman alone with no one to turn to. I saw a small, brightly lit diner, its windows steamy, emitting the comforting aroma of fried food. My stomach gave another fierce protest. I hesitated, then pushed open the heavy glass door. The diner was bustling, filled with the clatter of plates and cheerful chatter. A kind-faced waitress, her blonde hair pulled back in a neat bun, smiled at me as I found an empty booth by the window. I ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, a bowl of tomato soup and a glass of water, which cost $4.50. It tasted like heaven, warm and nourishing, chasing away some of the chill that had settled in my bones. While I ate, I heard an elderly woman at the counter talking to the waitress. "It's a shame, dear, but my boarder left this morning. Had to move out of the city for family reasons, and now I have an empty room." My ears perked up. A room, could it be? As the old woman, her face kind and lined with age, paid her bill, I gathered my courage. My heart thumped against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Excuse me, ma'am," I began, my voice a little shaky. "I overheard you talking about a room. I just arrived in the city, and I'm looking for a place to stay. I'm a hard worker, and I can pay rent, even if it's just a little each week to start." She turned, her eyes, the color of warm tea, studying me. "Well, bless your heart, child, you look like you've seen a ghost. What's your name?" "It's Lily, ma'am," I replied, feeling a flicker of hope. "I'm Mrs. Henderson. My room is small, just a single, but it's clean and safe. It's $50 a week, dear. Can you manage that?" $50 a week. With $7.50 left from my initial funds, it was impossible right now. My face must have fallen because Mrs. Henderson reached out a hand, patting my arm. "Don't fret, child. I can see you're honest. You can pay me $20 to start and then pay the rest when you get your first job. I'm a good judge of character, and you remind me of my granddaughter, bless her soul." Tears pricked my eyes again, but these were tears of gratitude. "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson." "Thank you so much. I promise I won't let you down." "I know you won't, dear. Finish your soup, then I'll walk you home. It's just a few blocks from here." Mrs. Henderson's small, tidy apartment above a quiet bookstore was a sanctuary. The room was indeed small, with a narrow bed, a rickety dresser, and a window that overlooked a tree-lined street. But it was clean, and most importantly, it was safe. It smelled faintly of lavender and old books. That first night, I slept soundly, the urban hum of Riverside a comforting lullaby rather than an unsettling roar. The quiet was different here. It was a city quiet, a constant background murmur of distant traffic and muffled voices, but it lacked the oppressive, heavy silence of Uncle John's house, which had been thick with unspoken malice. Here, even the quiet moments were filled with the promise of possibility, a sense of benign anonymity. The next morning, after a simple breakfast of toast and tea with Mrs. Henderson, I began my job hunt. I walked for hours, my feet aching, my spirits wavering at each no hiring sign. I tried restaurants, dry cleaners, grocery stores, anything that would give me a foothold. The city felt less welcoming under the harsh glare of the morning sun, its endless concrete and glass feeling indifferent to my plight. Just as despair began to set in, I saw a sign taped to the window of a bustling bakery. "Help wanted kitchen assistant, apply inside." The bakery was a warm, fragrant haven, smelling of yeast, cinnamon, and roasting coffee beans. A stern-faced but kind-eyed woman named Maria, the owner, interviewed me. I told her honestly that I had no experience in a professional kitchen, but that I was a fast learner, incredibly determined, and willing to do any task. I showed her my few dollars, explaining my situation, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. Maria looked at me, her dark eyes piercing, then a small smile touched her lips. "You have fire in your eyes, girl. I like that. I can teach you. It's hard work, 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, starting at $10 an hour. Can you handle it?" "Yes, ma'am," I said, my voice strong. "I can handle anything." "Good," she said, nodding. "Start tomorrow at 5:00 a.m. sharp. Don't be late." That night, I called my father's old watch a silent testament to his spirit, held the framed photo of him and me close, and whispered my thanks. I was bone-tired, but a new kind of energy coursed through my veins. I had a job. I had a place to stay. I was on my way. The next few months were a blur of hard work. I woke before the sun, the alarm on my father's watch jolting me awake at 4:00 a.m. I learned to knead dough until my arms ached, to frost cupcakes with delicate precision, to wash mountains of dishes until my fingers pruned, and to sweep the bakery floor until it gleamed. Maria was a tough but fair boss, quick to correct but also to praise. She taught me the secrets of baking, the rhythm of a busy kitchen, and the importance of perseverance. My hands, once soft, grew calloused and strong. My body, once slender, developed a new resilience. I saved every penny I could, carefully paying Mrs. Henderson her rent on time each week, buying only the absolute necessities. My $10 an hour, working 72 hours a week, meant I was bringing home $720 before taxes, which felt like a fortune. After rent and basic food, I managed to save around $400 each week. The small pile of bills in a secret compartment of my dresser slowly grew thicker. Life was hard, but it was honest. And free. The silence of my small room at Mrs. Henderson's was a balm. No angry words, no sneering faces, no constant judgment. It was a space where I could simply be, where I could read the few books Mrs. Henderson lent me, or simply sit and think. In this quiet, I often thought of Linda, Sarah, and Uncle John. The anger simmered beneath the surface, a low, steady flame. I knew they wouldn't just forget about me. Their malice ran too deep. And I was right. About 5 months after I left, a letter arrived at Mrs. Henderson's apartment, forwarded from Uncle John's old address. It was from a distant relative, Aunt Carol, whom I hadn't seen in years. Her letter, written in a shaky hand, spoke of my disappearance. "Lily, dear," it read, "I heard from Linda that you ran away, that you stole money from your Uncle John and left him in a terrible state. She said you were ungrateful and wild, that you just up and vanished without a trace, leaving a huge mess behind. I hope it's not true, dear, because your father always spoke so highly of you." A cold fury swept through me, chilling me to the bone even in the warm bakery kitchen. They were spreading lies, not just vague rumors but specific, damaging falsehoods. Stole money. The gall, the hypocrisy. It was they who had stolen from me from my father's legacy. This was a specific incident of disrespect, a calculated attempt to tarnish my name, to poison any chance I might have of ever reconnecting with what little family I had left. The thought of Aunt Carol, a sweet, gentle soul, believing such hateful nonsense about me, twisted my stomach. They wanted to make sure that even if I tried to reach out, no one would believe me. They wanted to isolate me completely, to erase my good name, to leave me truly alone in the world. My hands trembled as I carefully folded the letter. Maria noticed my distress. "What's wrong, Lily? You look like you've seen a ghost." I showed her the letter. She read it, her face hardening. "These are terrible lies, child. Is this true? Did you steal from your uncle?" "No, Maria, never," I cried, my voice thick with emotion. "They are the ones who took everything. My father's house, his savings, even his memory they tried to erase. I left because I couldn't bear their hatred anymore. They told everyone I was worthless, that I meant nothing." Maria put an arm around my shoulder, her touch firm and comforting. "I believe you, Lily. I've seen your work ethic, your honesty. These people, they sound cruel, but lies have a way of coming undone. You just keep doing what's right and the truth will shine through." Maria's words were a lifeline, a balm to my raw emotions. But the incident solidified my resolve. This wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about justice. They had attacked my character, my very identity. They had tried to paint me as a thief, a runaway, a bad person. They wanted to make sure that the world thought of me as the villain, and them as the wronged parties. That was a line they should not have crossed. Another specific incident of disrespect came about 8 months after I left. I had saved enough money to buy a small, second-hand laptop. I wanted to start looking for information online, to better understand my father's will, to research my legal options. One evening, after a long shift, I was browsing a local community forum for my old hometown. To my horror, I stumbled upon a post, anonymously written, but its bitterness was unmistakably Linda's. It talked about a certain individual who had abandoned their elderly uncle, leaving him burdened with debt and struggling to maintain the family home. It spoke of ingratitude and selfishness, painting a picture of me as a heartless, irresponsible person who had caused misery for her entire family. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just private gossip, this was public defamation. They were actively campaigning against me, twisting the narrative, ensuring that anyone who remembered me or might have heard of my father would only hear their distorted version of events. The post even implied that I had squandered any inheritance, which was a blatant lie designed to protect their own theft. They wanted to make sure that no one would ever question their right to my father's assets. The malice was palpable, seeping through the screen, making my hands shake with a mixture of rage and despair. They wanted me to be forgotten, reviled, a cautionary tale. I closed the laptop, my heart hammering. How could people be so cruel? How could family members inflict such damage? But then Maria's words came back to me. Lies have a way of coming undone. I took a deep breath. They wanted me to be broken, to give up, to disappear, but that was not my father's way. He had faced hardship with courage, and so would I. Each malicious act, each lie they spun, was not breaking me down. It was forging me into something stronger, harder, more determined. It was adding fuel to the fire within me, sharpening my focus on my ultimate goal. I started taking evening classes at a local community college 2 nights a week after my bakery shifts. I enrolled in basic business courses, wanting to understand finances, property law, and how to manage money. It was exhausting. I would leave the bakery at 5:00 p.m., rush to class from 6:00 p.m. to 9:00 p.m., then return to Mrs. Henderson's, often falling asleep over my textbooks. My body was perpetually tired, but my mind was alive, soaking up knowledge like a sponge. Every lesson, every formula, every legal term I learned felt like another weapon in my arsenal, another step towards being able to confront them. I wasn't just working anymore. I was building, brick by painful brick, the foundation of my future. Maria noticed my dedication and after 1 year offered me a promotion. "Lily," she said, her voice softer than usual, "you are the hardest worker I have ever seen. You know this kitchen better than I do sometimes. I want to make you my assistant manager. It's $15 an hour and you'll have more responsibilities but also more flexibility for your studies." A lump formed in my throat. $15 an hour. That meant even more savings, more opportunities. It was a tangible sign of my progress, a testament to my perseverance. "Thank you, Maria." "Thank you so much. You earned it, child. You earned every bit of it." With the increased income, I was able to move into a slightly larger room, still at Mrs. Henderson's, but with its own small bathroom and a bit more space for my books. I bought a small, sturdy desk and a comfortable chair. The laptop became my window to the world, allowing me to research local property records, legal statutes, and the history of my father's land. I learned about probate law, about property deeds, about the rights of next of kin. Each piece of information was like finding a piece of a scattered puzzle, slowly beginning to form a coherent picture. The picture was grim. Uncle John had indeed managed to gain control of my father's assets, likely through some legal loophole or outright deception, taking advantage of my youth and grief. The thought of them living in my father's house, spending his money, enjoying the fruits of his hard work, while I toiled for every penny, still stung. But it no longer crippled me. It fueled me. It transformed the raw pain into a cold, focused anger, a steely determination. I visualized their smug faces, their contemptuous stares. I remembered every hurtful word, every dismissive gesture. They thought they had won. They thought they had gotten rid of me. But they had only given me time to grow, time to learn, time to become stronger than they could ever imagine. They had no idea that I had not only inherited my father's strength, but had cultivated my own, tempered in the fires of their cruelty and the solitude of my struggle. I made a new calendar and marked a date 2 years from when I first left. On that date, I promised myself I would be ready. I would have enough savings, enough knowledge, and enough confidence to face them head-on. The framed photo of my father, placed prominently on my new desk, seemed to smile at me, his eyes full of pride. The 2 years flew by, a relentless cycle of work, study, and saving. I earned my business certificate, a tangible proof of my dedication. I saved over $30,000, an amount that seemed impossible when I had started with $12. Maria had become like a second mother, a fierce protector and a mentor. Mrs. Henderson was a grandmother figure, always ready with a kind word and a warm meal. I had built a new life, a new foundation, entirely on my own. I had forged new relationships built on respect and honesty, a stark contrast to the poisoned relationships of my past. But despite the progress, the memory of their actions never faded. The specific incidents of disrespect continued to haunt me, not in a way that weakened me, but in a way that kept my purpose sharp and clear. I remembered the anonymous online post about me abandoning my uncle, how it twisted my truth and made me seem like a monster. I thought of Aunt Carol's letter, the way Linda had so casually slandered me to distant relatives. These weren't just personal slights. They were calculated attacks on my reputation, my standing in the world, designed to ensure that I would remain isolated and discredited. They wanted to make sure that even if I returned, no one would listen to my side of the story. They wanted to strip me of my voice, my credibility, my very existence in the social fabric of my old town. One afternoon, Maria found me poring over legal documents, my brow furrowed in concentration. She sat down opposite me, a cup of strong coffee in her hand. "You're getting ready, aren't you, Lily?" she asked, her voice soft but knowing. I looked up, meeting her gaze. "Yes, Maria, I am. I have to. They can't get away with what they did." "No, they can't," she agreed, taking a sip of her coffee. "But remember, Lily, justice is not always about winning in court. Sometimes it's about standing tall, speaking your truth, and showing them that you are unbreakable. And sometimes their own actions are their greatest punishment." Her words resonated deep within me. I wasn't seeking revenge for revenge's sake. I was seeking justice, the restoration of my father's legacy, and the reclamation of my own name. I wanted to expose their lies, not just for myself, but for the memory of my father. He deserved better than to have his life's work stolen and his daughter slandered. The final days leading up to my planned return were a mixture of intense anticipation and quiet preparation. I meticulously organized all my documents, copies of my father's will, which I had eventually managed to obtain through a helpful legal aid office, property records I had researched online, and a detailed account of all the lies and slanders I had heard or discovered. I even printed out the anonymous online post about me, a tangible piece of their malice. This meticulous planning was a reflection of my growth. The girl who had left with $12 and a vague hope was now a woman armed with knowledge, resources, and a clear strategy. I gave Maria 2 weeks' notice, explaining my plans. She hugged me tightly, her eyes moist. "You come back and visit us, Lily. This will always be your home away from home." Mrs. Henderson baked me a small cake, her hands trembling slightly as she handed it to me. "Be careful, dear, but be strong. Your father would be so proud." On the morning of Oct 27, 2025, exactly 2 years and 1 month after I had walked away, I stood at the bus station once more. This time, I wasn't alone and scared. I was poised and ready. My bag was still a canvas one, but it was filled with carefully selected clothing, my laptop, and all my important documents. My father's watch was on my wrist, ticking steadily, a heartbeat against my skin. The framed photo was packed carefully, a silent witness to my journey. I bought a return ticket, a deliberate choice, signifying that I was not running away, I was returning. The bus journey back was different. I didn't gaze out the window with a heavy heart. Instead, I spent the time reviewing my notes, rehearsing potential conversations, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. There was no fear now, only a quiet intensity. The landmarks of my old hometown began to appear, familiar yet seen through new eyes. The ancient oak tree by Mrs. Gable's fence still stood, its branches swaying gently in the autumn breeze. The general store, the old church, the familiar houses, they were all there, waiting. As the bus pulled into the small, unassuming station, I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it, the moment I had been planning, working, and living for. I stepped off the bus, my head held high, my gaze steady. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke. It smelled like home, but it was a home I now had to fight for. I made my way directly to Uncle John's house, my father's house. I didn't walk stealthily. I walked with purpose, with a quiet confidence that broadcasted my return. As I approached the familiar doorstep, my heart began to pound a little harder, but it was not from fear. It was the drumbeat of a new chapter, a final confrontation. The house looked exactly the same, well-maintained, a testament to my father's meticulous care, now enjoyed by those who had stolen it. I took a deep breath, the scent of the familiar petunias by the porch filling my lungs. I reached out, my hand steady, and knocked firmly on the front door. A moment of silence, then shuffling footsteps from inside. The door opened slowly, revealing Linda's face, her eyes wide with shock, her mouth falling open as she recognized me. Her usually carefully constructed composure crumbled, replaced by a look of utter disbelief, then fear. "Lily," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. What are you doing here?" Her face, usually so smug and self-assured, was now pale, almost ashen. Her hair, typically styled perfectly, seemed to stand on end. She looked as if she had seen a ghost, or perhaps a reckoning. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her freckles standing out sharply against her skin. Her carefully applied makeup suddenly looked brittle, like a mask about to crack. Her jaw hung slightly open, betraying a complete lack of control. I looked at her, my expression calm, devoid of the hatred that had once consumed me. There was only resolve. "I'm here," I stated, my voice clear and unwavering, "to reclaim what is mine, to reclaim what my father left for me, and to make sure everyone knows the truth about what you did." The words hung in the crisp autumn air, a gauntlet thrown. Linda's eyes darted nervously, her gaze flicking past me as if searching for an escape, for a way to deny the undeniable. Her usual haughty demeanor had completely vanished, replaced by a tangible fear that made her shoulders slump and her hands clench into fists at her sides. She seemed smaller, almost fragile, under the weight of my unwavering gaze. The tables had turned, and she knew it. The power dynamics had shifted, definitively. Like and subscribe for more fireside stories from Aunt Me. I could still feel the chill in the air from when the door had been left ajar, even though a good 15 minutes had passed since little Timmy had bolted out, his laughter echoing down the lane, utterly oblivious to the draft he'd invited into my old bones. The silence that settled after his youthful exuberance was thick, almost suffocating, like a heavy woolen blanket pulled tight over my ears. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of a country morning, nor the comforting hush of a house at rest. No, this was a different kind of quiet, a silence born of absence, a hollow space where warmth and chatter used to reside. It hummed with unspoken words, with the ghosts of past conversations, and with the subtle tremor of my own fragile heart. The grandfather clock in the hall, a sturdy sentinel for 75 years, ticked with an exaggerated solemnity, each tick-tock a tiny hammer blow against the stillness, marking not just the passing of minutes, but the slow, relentless march of loneliness. Dust motes danced in the slivers of sunlight that pierced through the lace curtains, swirling in silent chaos, mirroring the quiet turmoil inside me. The aroma of forgotten coffee, cold in its mug on the kitchen counter, mingled faintly with the lingering scent of Timmy's sugary cereal, a testament to hurried mornings and fleeting visits. My living room, once a vibrant hub of family life, now felt like a stage after the audience had departed, the props still in place, but the actors long gone, leaving behind only the echo of their performance. This was the new normal, I realized, a quiet punctuated by hurried departures and the growing chasm between us and them. It was becoming a familiar pattern, a thread woven through the fabric of my days, growing thicker and more visible with each passing month. It wasn't a loud, angry disrespect, not usually. It was more insidious, like a slow-acting poison, seeping into the corners of my life. It was the way my daughter, Susan, would glance at her phone during our conversations, her eyes darting away from mine, her attention fragmenting into a dozen digital pieces even as I tried to share a simple story about Mrs. Henderson's prize-winning roses. It was the hurried, Mom, gotta go, before I could even finish a sentence, the click of the phone line severing our connection like a sharp knife. I remember one Tuesday around 3:00 p.m., I had baked a fresh batch of apple pies, 3 of them just like Michael always loved. His favorite with extra cinnamon and a lattice top, bubbling with sweet, spiced apples. I'd called him 3 times that afternoon, each call going straight to voicemail. Finally, around 5:30 p.m., I got a text message, not even a call back, just 5 words. "Busy mom, can't make it." No apology, no maybe next time, just a stark dismissal, delivered through a cold, impersonal screen. The pies sat cooling on the rack, their inviting aroma slowly fading, their crusts losing their initial crispness. I ended up giving 2 of them to the neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Peterson, who gratefully accepted them with warm smiles and genuine thanks, making me feel a pang of longing for the days when my own children's faces lit up with such simple appreciation. The 3rd pie, I put it in the freezer, a silent monument to dashed expectations. It wasn't just Michael. My son David, bless his heart, had always been a good boy, a bit absent-minded perhaps, but always with a kind word. But even with him, things had shifted. He'd visit, perhaps once every 2 weeks, usually on a Sunday afternoon around 2:00 p.m. But his visits had become more transactional. He'd come, often with his wife, Jessica, and their 2 children, 7-year-old Lily and 5-year-old Ethan. The kids would immediately scatter to play with the toys I kept specially for them, a wooden train set from 40 years ago, a box of colorful building blocks, and a collection of storybooks. David and Jessica, though, would usually settle into the living room, their eyes scanning the room, not at me, but at the furniture, the walls, the general state of the house. I overheard Jessica once, whispering to David in the kitchen around 3:15 p.m., thinking I was out of earshot. "Honestly, David," she'd hissed, her voice a low, sharp murmur, "doesn't it bother you? All this clutter and the smell, it's so old." My heart had twisted in my chest, a sudden, brutal clench. Old. This house was my sanctuary, filled with memories, with the scent of lavender potpourri, freshly baked bread, and years of happy living. It wasn't old, it was lived in. It wasn't clutter, it was cherished. I had turned away quickly, pretending to be engrossed in watering my African violets, the bright purple blooms blurring through an unexpected mist in my eyes. I felt a flush creep up my neck, a mortifying combination of shame and hurt. Then there was the incident with the family photos. For 60 years, I had kept a collection of old photo albums, bound in leather, their pages filled with snapshots of births, birthdays, Christmases, and summer vacations. They were the visual history of our family, from black and white images of my parents' wedding in 1948, to the sepia tones of my own childhood, to the vibrant colors of my children's graduation ceremonies in the 1980s and 1990s. One day, David and Jessica were visiting, and Lily, my granddaughter, was flipping through one of the albums, her small fingers tracing the faces of her ancestors. "Grandma, who's this?" she'd asked, pointing to a photo of my father as a young man. I had begun to tell her a story, a charming anecdote about his mischievous streak when he was a boy, when Jessica interrupted, her voice a little too bright, a little too loud. "Oh, Lily, darling, don't bore Grandma with those old things. Come on, let's watch something on the tablet." Dee then produced a sleek silver tablet from her bag, its screen glowing with animated figures. Lily, naturally, had been captivated, her interest in the faded photographs vanishing instantly. David, who had been observing the scene, merely shrugged, offering me a weak, almost apologetic smile, but saying nothing to Jessica. He didn't defend my stories, didn't encourage his daughter to learn about her heritage. He simply let it pass. The weight of that unspoken dismissal settled over me, heavier than any physical burden. The album, left open on the coffee table, felt suddenly exposed, its precious contents ignored, its stories silenced. I closed it slowly, carefully, the soft thud of the cover a final, quiet note of defeat. It wasn't just the large, noticeable slights. It was the constant stream of smaller ones, the tiny cuts that bled slowly, silently. It was the way they'd always forget to ask about my day, rushing to tell me all about theirs. It was the way they'd sometimes leave their dirty dishes in the sink, assuming I'd clean them, even though my joints ached and my hands weren't as nimble as they once were. Just last Wednesday, 4 days ago, my grandson Ethan left a half-eaten sandwich on the coffee table, smeared with peanut butter, and a sticky juice box next to it. When I gently reminded Jessica that perhaps he should clean up after himself, she waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, he's just a child, Mom, I'll get it later." But later never came, and I found myself scrubbing dried peanut butter off my antique mahogany table at 8:00 p.m., my back protesting with every movement. The feeling wasn't anger, not really. It was a deep, aching sadness, a sense of being taken for granted, of being seen not as a person with feelings and needs, but as a convenient fixture, a service provider in their busy lives. My heart ached for the days when a visit meant genuine connection, when my children would sit for hours, talking, laughing, truly seeing me. I remembered one summer afternoon in 1985. Susan, then 12 years old, had sat with me on the porch swing, shelling peas from the garden. We talked about everything and nothing, the rhythmic pop of the pea pods against the quiet hum of cicadas in the distance. She listened intently as I told her stories from my own childhood, her bright young eyes fixed on mine, soaking up every word. David, then 10 years old, would often sit at my feet, carefully drawing pictures while I read him stories from his favorite book, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Now their eyes were glued to screens, their ears tuned to distant notifications, their minds far away from my quiet presence. The porch swing still hung on the veranda, its chains creaking softly in the breeze, but it rarely saw shared moments anymore. It felt like a silent witness to a beautiful past that had faded into a blurred memory. The house itself, once a vibrant echo chamber of family life, felt increasingly large and empty. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind rattling the windows, seemed to underscore the absence of laughter and lively conversation. The kitchen, where countless meals had been shared, where birthday cakes had been decorated, now often sat in a profound stillness, save for the hum of the refrigerator. I'd sometimes stand at the window, watching the leaves turn from the vibrant greens of summer to the fiery golds and russets of autumn, then to the stark, skeletal branches of winter, and back again to the tender greens of spring. 5 years had passed like this, 5 seasons of watching and waiting, hoping for things to revert to how they once were. But the current of life, it seemed, only flowed forward, carrying my children and grandchildren further and further away from the quiet eddy of my existence. I started to notice things, small changes that, taken individually, might seem trivial, but together painted a clearer, more painful picture. My doctor's appointments, for example. I had a recurring appointment every 3 months for a checkup, starting last year on 10 May. For years, one of my children would always offer to drive me. It was never an imposition, they'd often combine it with their own errands. But lately, when I'd mention the upcoming appointment, there'd be a sudden silence, a quick glance between David and Susan, a murmured excuse about being swamped at work or having a conflicting meeting. Eventually, I started calling a taxi service. A nice young man named Robert usually picked me up. The first time I told Susan I was taking a taxi, her response was a quick, "Oh, good, Mom. That saves us a trip." No concern for the cost, no offer to contribute, just relief that they didn't have to bother. It cost me $35 each way, a small sum in the grand scheme of things, but it was the principle of it, the quiet expectation that I would figure it out, that my needs were secondary to their convenience. I found myself biting my lip to hold back the sharp words that wanted to tumble out, words about all the sacrifices I had made, all the drives to school, to soccer practice, to doctor's visits for them. But I swallowed them down, just like I swallowed the lump in my throat, because I knew it wouldn't change anything, and it would only make me seem like a burden, a complaining old woman. Another incident that etched itself into my memory like a burn mark on soft wood happened during the holidays, specifically on 25 December last year. Christmas, a time traditionally overflowing with warmth and familial joy, had always been my favorite. I'd spend weeks preparing, baking dozens of cookies, wrapping presents with care, stringing up lights that twinkled with a hopeful glow. Last year, I had spent 3 full days making my famous fruitcake, a recipe passed down from my grandmother, a rich, dark confection soaked in brandy for 3 months, glistening with candied fruits. It was a labor of love, a tradition. When David and his family arrived, around 11:00 a.m., the house was filled with the scent of pine and cinnamon. I presented the fruitcake with a flourish, expecting the usual exclamations of delight. Instead, Jessica picked up a slice, sniffed it delicately, and said, "Oh, Mom, you really shouldn't have. We're all trying to eat healthier these days, you know, all that sugar." She placed it back on the platter untouched. David mumbled something about being full from breakfast. Not one slice was eaten that day. It sat on the festive table, a heavy, dark slab, a symbol of my effort dismissed, my love rejected. Later, as I cleared the table, my hands trembled slightly as I wrapped the untouched fruitcake, sealing it away, along with a piece of my heart, in aluminum foil. The bright, cheerful Christmas lights seemed to dim, their glow suddenly muted, reflecting the chill that had settled deep within me. The festive carols playing softly on the radio sounded distant, almost mocking. I started to withdraw, little by little. I stopped suggesting family dinners as often. I stopped calling them as frequently. My voice, once a steady presence on their phone lines, became a quieter whisper in the background of their lives. I kept telling myself it was because I didn't want to be a bother, but deep down, I knew it was more than that. It was self-preservation. It hurt less to expect nothing than to have my expectations repeatedly crushed. The silence in the house grew deeper, more pervasive, as if the very walls were holding their breath, waiting for a joy that no longer came. I spent more time tending my garden, my hands finding solace in the rich earth, nurturing the delicate blooms that, unlike some people, responded with beauty and vibrancy to care. The roses, my hydrangeas, the sweet peas climbing the trellis they bloomed, in defiance of the quiet sorrow that had taken root in my soul. They didn't speak, but their silent beauty offered a comfort that words often failed to provide. Sometimes, late at night, when the moon cast long, ghostly shadows across the floorboards, I would lie awake, listening to the gentle hum of the refrigerator, the distant bark of a neighbor's dog, the rustle of leaves outside my window. My mind would drift back to memories of David as a clumsy 6-year-old, his face smeared with chocolate cake on his birthday, his eyes wide with pure, unadulterated joy. Or Susan, a feisty 8-year-old, proudly showing off a drawing she'd made just for me, her tiny hand clutching the crayon-stained paper. Where had that love gone? That simple, uncomplicated affection? Had I done something wrong? Had I been too strict or perhaps too lenient? I replayed conversations in my head, scrutinizing every word, every gesture, searching for a moment where I might have derailed their affection, planted the seeds of this detachment. But I found nothing. Just a lifetime of giving, of loving, of putting their needs before my own. The answer, if there was one, remained elusive, hidden behind a veil of confusion and pain. The pillow beneath my head often felt damp, not from sweat, but from the tears that silently tracked paths down my temples, evaporating before morning light could betray my nocturnal sorrow. The situation escalated subtly, almost imperceptibly, until one day it became undeniably clear. It was about my belongings, things that held not just monetary value but decades of sentimental worth. I had a beautiful antique desk, made of dark cherry wood, a family heirloom passed down for 4 generations, starting from my great-grandmother in 1890. It had a secret compartment where my father used to hide small trinkets for me when I was a child. David had always admired it, commenting on its craftsmanship. One afternoon, he came over around 2:00 p.m. without Jessica or the children, which was unusual. He sat down and after a few minutes of small talk about the weather, he finally cleared his throat. "Mom," he began, his voice a little strained, "listen about that desk. You know, the cherry one. I was talking to Jessica, and we really need a new desk for my home office. Mine is just functional, and yours is so beautiful. We're thinking since you don't really use it much anymore, maybe you could let us have it. We'd put it to good use." My heart hammered against my ribs. "But David," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "that desk, it belonged to my grandmother. It has such history. And I do use it, dear, for my letters, for my bills." He cut me off, a flicker of impatience in his eyes. "Mom, please, be practical. You have a smaller desk in your bedroom for that. This one is too grand for just bills. It deserves to be admired, used properly. We take good care of it, of course." The words "good care" felt like a hollow mockery. It wasn't about good care, it was about taking. He wasn't asking, he was gently demanding. The unspoken implication was clear. It was my fault for not using it properly, for holding onto things that, in his view, had outlived their purpose in my life. I looked at his face, at the determined set of his jaw, and I saw a stranger, not the boy who used to sit at that very desk, drawing airplanes on scraps of paper. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. What could I say? To refuse would be to invite an argument, to be labeled selfish or stubborn. To agree would be to surrender a piece of my past, a tangible link to my ancestry, to a history he no longer seemed to value. I hesitated, the silence stretching between us, thick with unspoken tensions. The ticking of the grandfather clock seemed to mock my indecision. My gaze drifted to the intricate carvings on the desk's legs, to the faint scratch marks I knew were from my father's toy soldiers. How could I just give it away? It was not just wood and brass, it was memory, it was love, it was them. "Let me think about it, David," I finally managed, my voice sounding weak and shaky. He nodded, but his expression clearly conveyed his displeasure. "Fine, Mom, but don't take too long. We really need it soon. We're looking at renovating the office by the end of next month, around 30 November. He then changed the subject, talking about his work, his new promotion, his children's achievements, as if the conversation about the desk had never happened, as if he hadn't just asked me to give up a piece of my soul. He stayed for another 45 minutes, talking mostly about himself, before standing up, giving me a quick, perfunctory hug and leaving. The house, after his departure, felt even colder, the silence heavier, weighted down by the unspoken demand, the casual disregard for my feelings. This wasn't an isolated incident. Susan, a few weeks later, started hinting about the antique silver tea set I had inherited from my mother. "Mom," she'd say, eyeing the gleaming tea set displayed in the dining room cabinet. "That set is just gathering dust here. It's so beautiful, but you never use it, do you? Jessica has a modern one, but I've always loved the classic look. It would be perfect for my dinner parties. We host about 6 parties a year, you know." Again, the implication was clear. I was not using it, therefore it should go to someone who would. My possessions, my cherished heirlooms, were becoming commodities, things to be redistributed based on their perceived utility to them, not their sentimental value to me. It felt like my life was being slowly dismantled, piece by precious piece, with my own children acting as the dismantling crew. Each suggestion was a gentle probe, testing the limits of my generosity, pushing the boundaries of my silence. I remember one particularly poignant moment, around 7:00 p.m. on a crisp autumn evening. I was sitting in my favorite armchair, a hand-stitched quilt spread over my lap, listening to a classical music station on the old radio. The room was softly lit by the gentle glow of a single lamp, casting warm pools of light on the worn rug. Susan called. I picked up, hoping for a genuine chat. Instead, after a rapid-fire update on her hectic day, she launched into a detailed account of a problem she was having with her 17-year-old son, Mark, about his college applications. She spoke for almost 20 minutes, detailing Mark's apathy, the financial strains, the competitive academic landscape. I listened patiently, offering what advice I could, recalling my own struggles helping David and Michael navigate their choices decades ago. When she finally paused, a brief lull in her monologue, I gently interjected, "You know, dear, I've been feeling a little tired lately. My arthritis has been acting up quite a bit, especially in my knees, and I've been thinking about getting a stairlift installed. It's becoming harder to go up and down the 15 steps to my bedroom." There was a beat of silence on the other end, then a quick, almost panicked exhale. "Oh, Mom, a stairlift? Really? Isn't that a bit drastic and expensive? You know, money's really tight for us right now, with Mark's tuition and everything. Are you sure you can't just rest more, maybe move your bedroom downstairs?" The suggestion felt like a slap. My bedroom, my private space for over 50 years, filled with my personal treasures, my books, my quiet memories, moved downstairs to some makeshift arrangement. All to save them the inconvenience of my needs, of my comfort, of my aging body. It wasn't just the money. It was the utter lack of empathy, the immediate pivot to their financial situation, the complete disregard for my physical discomfort. The warmth of the lamp, the comfort of the quilt, the soothing melody of the cello on the radio all seemed to vanish, replaced by a cold, sharp ache in my chest. I felt like a problem, a burden to be managed rather than a mother, a person deserving of care and consideration. I simply said, "Never mind, dear. I'll figure something out." And I did. I called a local company the very next day, 18 October, and arranged for an estimate. It would cost me around $3,500, a significant sum, but the thought of asking them again, of laying my vulnerability bare only to have it dismissed, was more painful than the financial outlay. The quiet resolve that had been slowly building inside me solidified. I realized then that I could not expect from them what they were unwilling to give. Their love, if it was still there, had become conditional, buried under layers of modern life's demands and a pervasive sense of self-entitlement. It was a bitter pill to swallow, this realization, but also, surprisingly, a liberating one. It meant I could stop waiting, stop hoping, stop the endless cycle of disappointment. I could choose to focus on my own well-being, on the small joys that still sprinkled my days. I could find comfort in my garden, in my books, in the kindness of neighbors like the Petersons, in the friendly greetings of the delivery person, and in the quiet companionship of my own thoughts. The house, once a monument to past shared joys, became a sanctuary of present peace, a place where I could be myself, free from the subtle judgments and casual slights. I began to make deliberate choices. When David next visited, 2 weeks after the stairlift conversation, he again brought up the antique desk, this time with a more direct tone, almost an expectation. "Mom," he started, "we've started clearing out the office. So about that desk, can we pick it up next Saturday, 28 October, around 10:00 a.m. I looked at him, truly looked at him, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the usual surge of panic or the familiar ache of disappointment. Instead, I felt a calm, steady conviction. "David," I said, my voice clear and firm. "The desk is staying right where it is. It's a family heirloom and it belongs here with me in this house. If you need a new desk, I suggest you look for one at a furniture store." His mouth dropped open slightly, a flash of surprise, then annoyance crossing his face. He stammered, "But Mom, I thought you said you'd think about it." "And I did," I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "I've thought about it, and my answer is no. This desk stays." The silence that followed was charged, far different from the earlier, sad silences. This one had an edge, a sharpness. He mumbled a few more protests, trying to cajole, then to guilt-trip, but I held my ground. He eventually left, his departure more abrupt than usual, the door closing with a definitive thud that resonated through the quiet house. For the first time in a long time, the silence after his leaving didn't feel heavy with sadness. It felt empowering. It felt like mine. That small victory, the reclaiming of my own boundaries, sparked a new kind of energy within me. It wasn't angry energy, but a quiet strength. I started to appreciate my own company more fully. I spent hours reading, exploring new hobbies like painting watercolors, delicate landscapes, and vibrant floral arrangements that now adorned my walls. I joined a weekly book club at the local library, a delightful gathering of 8 women, all of similar age, who shared stories and laughter over cups of tea every Thursday at 2:00 p.m. I found solace and genuine connection in these new friendships, in the respectful give and take of conversations where my opinions were valued and my stories were heard. My financial independence, something I had worked hard for my entire life, also became a source of quiet pride. I had saved diligently, starting from my very first job as a secretary in 1965, always putting aside a portion of my earnings, no matter how small. Now, that nest egg provided me not just security, but freedom. I didn't need to depend on my children, and more importantly, they no longer had any leverage over me. The $3,500 for the stairlift was paid for without a second thought, and the installation was completed promptly on 15 November, providing immense relief for my aching knees. The gentle whirring of the lift as it carried me up and down the stairs felt like a small, daily triumph, a tangible manifestation of my newfound autonomy. The children, of course, noticed the shift. My refusal of the desk, followed by a similar firm no to Susan's hinting about the tea set, caused a ripple of surprise, then perhaps a touch of annoyance. Their visits became slightly less frequent, and when they did come, their tone was a little more reserved, a subtle tension in the air. But I found I didn't mind as much. The quality of connection mattered more than the quantity of visits. If they came only because they felt obligated or because they wanted something, then perhaps it was better they didn't come at all. One afternoon, about 3 months after the desk incident, on 20 January, Susan called. Her voice was uncharacteristically hesitant. "Mom," she started, I just wanted to apologize. For a lot of things. I've been thinking about what you said about the desk and the way we've been. It's not right. We've been so focused on our own lives, our own problems, that we haven't been seeing you. Not really, and that's not fair. You've done so much for us always." I listened, my heart a complex mix of emotions. There was a fragile hope, a cautious optimism, mingling with the lingering echoes of past hurts. Was this a genuine turning point, or just a momentary flicker of conscience? "It means a lot to hear you say that, Susan," I replied, my voice softer than I intended. "It has been difficult. I've felt forgotten, taken for granted." She paused, and I could hear her take a deep, shaky breath. "I know, Mom, and I'm so sorry. We want to do better. David and we talked. We really want to make things right. Can we come over this Sunday? Just us, no kids, no demands, just to talk." A small, hopeful spark ignited within me. It was a beginning, perhaps. A fragile, tentative beginning. The path to repair wouldn't be easy, and the scars of past disrespect wouldn't vanish overnight. But the possibility of healing, of rebuilding those connections, was a gift I hadn't dared to hope for. The quiet of my house, which had once felt so heavy with absence, now held a new kind of anticipation, a gentle hum of possibility. It was not a guarantee, but it was a chance. And sometimes, a chance is all you need to start anew. The fire in my hearth crackled softly, casting dancing shadows on the walls, a warm, comforting glow. It reminded me that even after a long, cold winter, spring always finds a way to return. And that, my dear friends, is a story that still unfolds. It's a reminder that sometimes setting boundaries, standing firm in your worth, is not about pushing people away, but about teaching them how to love you better. It's about remembering that your own value isn't dependent on their recognition, but on the strength you find within yourself. May your own fireside be warm and your heart be full. I'll be back soon with more tales from the heart.